Begin Podfix Network transmission. In 3, 2, 1.
Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean casting nets, fish nerds. Fish nerds. Fish nerds. It's a podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fish Nerds, a show about fish, fishing, and eating fish. I'm Clay Groves, Chief Executive Fish Nerd, Licensed Fishing Guide, your best friend, and John King. Hi.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Crappie hippie. Tell us who you are, John.
I am John King, the Crappie Hippie. I'm Clay's co-host again this evening. I am also the co-founder of Glasswater Angling, lead-free fishing. We make lead-free fishing lures, lead-free jig heads. We have all kinds of good products. You can come and check us out at glasswaterangling.com. So that's just a small part of my story, but the main part of my story these days.
Well, John, we've got a big show tonight. We have lots of people joining us, which is really exciting. So we're going to be talking about flowers, but hang on for that story for just a minute. We're going to talk about Fire and Ice, a cigar event. We're going to do just a little bit of news, not a lot tonight. Doc Martin is back with us. She got to interview the shark guy, Dr. David Shiffman. He was on the podcast a couple months ago. His new book out. And then you talked to Todd Corayer about Cinder Worms. So that'll be fun. I did. And even got Jeff Danaldson back in the game. Haven't heard from Jeff in a long time, our effing librarian. So, holy smokes, a lot to get into. So why don't we get right into it?
All righty. Well, I'm going to start this off with a question, Clay. Mm-hmm. You like flowers?
You don't send me love songs anymore. Yeah, I like flowers, John.
Well, do you believe in flower signs for fishing?
So you go shad fishing when the shadberry bushes are in bloom, that kind of stuff?
Hey, that thing, yeah.
Yes, I do.
Awesome, you're awesome. All right, well, the daffodils are getting ready to bloom here in Kansas.
Well, you have ground showing?
Yeah. We're in the tropical south compared to y'all.
We've got 2 feet of snow on the ground still. It's happy springtime, by the way.
Happy springtime to you, too. This is awesome. I'm finally, over the line into spring. Good, because my wood pile is definitely not going to hold out much longer.
That's good news.
Yeah. So anyway, I've been looking at the daffodil patch, and they're getting really swollen, and I see little odd petals sticking out through there and here and there through the covering or whatever you call it when it's closed up like that. But what that means in Kansas is that the walleye spawn is about to happen. So as soon as they get open and blooming strong, the walleye are going to start heading to the rocks and to do their thing.
Now, how do walleye spawn, John? Do you know?
Pretty much just like...
Wait, hang on.
Oh.
We got to play our sex music.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. All right, John, tell me how walleye do it.
I'm going to tell you how walleye do it.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, that big old lady walleye, she come down on the rocks. She looking around. She finds a place where she thinks is suitable, and she'll have some male walleye following her along. Then she will release her eggs at random, because these are non-custodial, whatever, non-husbandary. These are
they're bad parents.
They're bad parents. They're indifferent parents. So she's just gonna do her thing, and then these males are gonna swim along after her and dump their part of the contribution over the top of those eggs, and then in a little bit they're gonna hatch out in these beautiful little walleye.
Yeah, and then most get eaten. Yeah,
but the crazy thing is that we have this reservoir near me, and it's right, it is the reservoir that was built to serve the Kansas side of the, X million, 1.5 million people in the Kansas City metro area. So a lot of people come on down to Hillsdale, and the walleye fishery has held up admirably since 1983. Well, how do they do this? I thought they just don't fish in it all the time, but what they do is they set up these net traps, and those females swim in there, and then the biologists get hold of them and strip the eggs out of them. And I assume they grab a few males, maybe I don't know exactly how they do it. And I know the hardcore nerds are going to be like, oh, come on, man, get out there and really research this thing. And hopefully I will. But it's really groovy because they strip the eggs right there, put the female back in the lake, and take the eggs back to the hatchery, and then they raise them from there. So they don't have to have any brood fish to speak of. Mm-hmm. They just kind of catch these gals as they're coming up there to do their natural thing, and then they leave them in the lake. I've always been freaked out about how many 5, 6, 7, and even occasional 10-pound walleye this lake can produce, and it's been producing forever. But this is so ingenious. I just had to talk about it because when I walked by those daffodils today and I saw those petals peeping out, I was like, man, I got to let Clay in on this.
That's a good thing to know. Now, I do know how they strip salmon and spawn salmon the same way. So like in New Hampshire, and this happened in November in New Hampshire, the salmon hit the rivers that have all the dams around the lakes, and they net all the salmon out in these big traps. And they literally take the females out, and they just, when it's stripping, that means you hold the fish in your arms and you just squeeze their bellies, and it squirts out all these eggs into a. They use Tupperware, John, like a white Tupperware container, and then they put that fish back in the lake, and it goes on about its way. And then they take a male salmon, and they'll take 4 or 5 females all in one pile of eggs, and they'll take one male salmon, that's all they need, and they'll squirt all that. They call it milt, John.
Milt.
Milt. Yes. That's fish talk for sperm, and they put that all on top of the eggs. And they just mix it all together, bring it all to the hatchery, and birth them all there.
So they go ahead and get the milt right then probably off the walleye. They grab those. Yeah, and then this explains the decline in the popularity of the name Milton. Because I too many people are too scientific these days, and I mean, mad respect to all the Miltons out there, but I can see your struggle.
Yeah, little Milty. Sorry, buddy.
Okay, so what's next on the agenda? You got
Well, so John, every year I partner with our local cigar shop up here called Cigar Shenanigans, and that's Vinny works there. He's a bartender there. And we do an event on the ice called Fire and Ice. And we started this 5 years ago. And we partner with Dunbarton Cigar and Trust Cigar Factory. They're in Londonderry, New Hampshire. And the owner, his name is Steve Saka. You can Google him. He's kind of a big deal dude. And a big dude. Like, he's a monster of a guy. Like 300 pounds, bald guy, cigar smoker, whiskey guy. Just big monster of a dude, right? Super nice. And he comes up. And he is popular enough where he's a draw, where people don't care about the fishing as much as they care about meeting Steve Saka. So he's like a celebrity cigar guy. And so fishing is secondary. And so we just did our 5th year. We bring about 20 to 25 anglers out every single year, charge them a bunch of money. And then they have a special Woodbridge Reserve bourbon blended just for this event every year. Special cigars from Dunbarton Cigar and Trust. And of course, real time hanging out with this famous cigar guy, Steve Saka. So I put together just a little bit of a clip of a walk around I did on our pond with some fishing. And we even caught fish during it. And even, John, caught a trophy-sized pumpkin seed.
Whoa.
So New Hampshire has a catch and release trophy program. And the easiest trophy fish to get in New Hampshire is a pumpkin seed. It only has to be 8 inches long. And you're only required to prove it by taking a photo of the person who caught it with the fish looking healthy and the lake behind them. You don't need a tape measure, nothing. They want the fish back in the water as fast as possible. So they don't even care if you measure it. They just want to guess. You really might have to guess the length. Oh, we measured it. But so we have had a fisher catch a trophy fish while I was doing a live walk around on Facebook. And so we're going to play that little cut for you now. We're on Pequawket Pond, Secret Pond in Conway. Vinny's here. Hi, Vinny.
What's going on?
We're doing Fire and Ice, our annual trip with Cigar Shenanigans.
Yep.
And Steve Saka.
Dunbarton Tobacco.
Yeah, so we'll show you what's going on here. First of all, Vinny cooked some great chili. Show us that chili. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. We got a nice fire going. It's like, 40 degrees out?
Yep.
Almost no wind. We're catching fish, smoking cigars.
Perfect day.
Perfect day. So let's show you everything. We got a special blend of Woodford Reserve for the trip. Let's take a walk. A little tour here. All right, there's the ice hole. We're still on about a foot of ice here, which is pretty great. George got the first fish of the day. George has been fishing with us for 4 years now? 5 years. And he's never caught a fish until today. And today he caught the first fish of the day.
That's right.
That's pretty amazing. How'd it feel?
It was feeling damn good.
And then you caught another one, and then nothing else.
No.
Why not?
No.
Yeah, I don't know why. Say your name.
Peter.
Where are you from, Peter?
Originally from upstate New York. I live in Maine.
Live in Maine now. How's the fishing been?
Not too bad at all.
How many fish have you caught? Good. What have you caught?
One pickerel, 3 perch.
That's not bad. You waiting for a bass?
That I am.
I hope you get him. Hope you get him.
Thank you.
It's hard to see other bass come out of the water, not out of your hole.
I haven't caught a bass in many years.
Well, keep at it. Keep at it. Hello. Say your name.
My name is Melanie,
And you're from
Canada.
Quebec?
Yes.
And you having fun? Yeah, I saw you catching fish over there like crazy on the tip-ups.
Yeah, I got 3 of my own and 1 on the fly.
Pretty good. So 4 fish so far.
Yes.
All right, and you're having a good time. And how about this weather?
That is amazing.
It's so comfortable.
Yeah.
Did you have some chili?
Yeah, just got one.
Good.
It was delicious.
Did you have some bourbon?
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, Steve's right over there, so we'll get after that.
Okay. Thanks.
Hey, Steve, say your name. Oscar, from where? Canada. How's the fishing today? Bad. Well, say your name.
Yes, the same because I haven't catched the first one.
Oh, but you,
This
is not good for the guide service here. I don't know if this is a good social.
that's Steve Saka from.
Steve Saka from Dumbarton Tobacco.
Yeah.
And the fishing has been fantastic for everybody but these two.
Right. You know why? Because they're having too much fun. You know, the problem is it's warm out. If you were uncomfortable, we'd be happier people. So.
No, we wouldn't be happier. We don't want to fish. There's a difference.
What's the bourbon you carry today?
We are currently tasting the Noah's Mill.
Nice. It was delicious.
Oh, thank you. Not that I bottled
Yeah,
it.
no, I made it myself.
Yeah, my work. I did it in my kitchen.
Yeah. And what are the cigars you got there?
Cigars are the Mi Querida Saka Khan.
Saka Khan. Is that
Saka Khan.
your name in the middle on purpose?
Nope. So it's kind of weird. So you can't give yourself nicknames. There's a rule.
Right.
Right?
Right. It's weird if you do it yourself.
Right, you weird. It's just way too. So when I was in the Navy, on my last ship, I had been on it for 4 years and I was really bored. So I started to learn how to be an underway junior officer of the deck. And that's normally something that like a second lieutenant learns.
Right.
And what you're actually doing is you're conning the ship. You're navigating and you're calling out the calls to the helmsman as to where the ship should go. And that's called conning. And at the same time was when Shaka Khan was popular music.
Shaka Khan.
Shaka Khan?
Yeah, yeah.
So they just started calling me Saka Khan.
I love it. I love
And
it.
that's where it came from. And it's really kind of a weird tie-in because my middle name is Temujin.
There's a lot of options for nicknames. So.
Temujin is the birth name of Genghis Khan.
No.
Yes. My father had very high aspirations.
Well, apparently.
Yes, which obviously weren't fulfilled. So there's like a lot of weird reasons why Saka Khan kind of stuck.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And this is your 5th year doing this with us, and we have so much fun.
No, I love it every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great event. You know what I like about it? It's just different. You do cigar events and you hang out in the store and yeah, but it's the same old, same old. It's nice to get out, some fresh air, you meet some people.
I mean, look at the views.
Yeah,
I mean, it's stunning out here.
I mean, so it's one of my favorite events every single year. The only thing that you could say is a potential negative is how limited it is. You
Right.
can only do 25 people there.
It's hard to do more than that.
Yeah, it
so,
really is.
Yeah.
Other than that, no, it's definitely one of the most interesting cigar events I've ever done. I've been doing these for like 30 years.
Well, we appreciate you doing it with us. We love it, and we always have so much fun, and we love meeting new people.
Yes, it's my first
Yeah,
time.
it's
Your first time? How many times have you done it?
This is-
3
Is
times.
this third time for you?
Yeah, they come down from Quebec for this. So yeah,
Cuba here.
Cuba all the way.
From Cuba.
You are from Cuba, so you know cigars. Are you schooling Steve on cigars?
Taste, but not too much.
Not too much.
I'm gonna put her to work.
You should. You should. You should. Well, Steve, thank you so much for putting this together.
No, thanks
It's
a
so
lot,
fun. It's so fun. All right, let's get some fish because I'm on live, and if you don't catch a fish, it's disappointing.
We've caught a few fish today, though.
We had one person caught 9 fish. We got a few big bass, lots of big sunfish. Someone got a trophy size. George got a trophy size pumpkin seed, so he got a little state recognition for that. Now George has been doing this 5 years with us, and his first fish he caught today was the first fish he caught.
Which
in
tells
5
you how
years.
big the event is. That you spend 5 years before you caught a fish.
Yeah, I like to.
You keep coming back.
I always blame the clients. So.
We will.
Well, and we can't promise this weather, but
Fish too, huh?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing that's nice about this. You don't have to know how to fish. You don't have to have any equipment. You can just come out here. Everything's provided for you. And the truth is,
Fish on. Oh, I got to go get a fish. Say bye. Say bye. Who's got a fish? Who's got one? I'm hurrying. Is it a pumpkin seed? Now, if that's 8 inches long, that's a trophy pumpkin seed. I think it is. Yeah. Hold it.
Yeah.
You're on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Yeah.
That is a trophy pumpkin seed, which means you're going to get state recognition for that fish.
No way.
You'll get a letter from the commissioner's office, and you'll get to your name on the website for one of the biggest pumpkin seeds in New Hampshire. What's your name? Don't hurt the fish. What's your name?
Jeff.
Jeff, and we're from where?
Sherbrooke, Quebec.
And how many times have you been out with us?
I don't know.
3 times?
Yeah, 3 times, yeah.
3 times. All right. Well, I'm going to end this live stream so I can take pictures and we can get you that trophy patch.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thanks. And we're back. So there it is, John.
That is awesome. That is awesome. You know, I love those pumpkin seeds. We don't have too many of them around here, and 8-incher sounds all right. That's all right.
Well,
and then
you know what's funny about pumpkin seeds? So our friend who won the big Rotary Fishing Derby a couple of years ago and did a stats show with him a couple of weeks ago here on the podcast.
Dude, I can still remember that. I know looking at me, you think,
well,
maybe
I'm talking to listeners more than you. Anyway, Mike Steffen, he has the state record for pumpkin seeds in New Hampshire. Now, last summer, I took my niece out fishing, and she caught and released a pumpkin seed that was bigger than his.
Oh, yeah.
But if we wanted to kill that fish, we would have had the state record. Now, isn't it strange that to get a state record, you have to kill the fish?
Yeah, I'm just kind of, I don't know about those kind of records. We keep pond records down here at the test pond, and my friend Nicole had it. Now Kim, the crappie stopper, has it on the red ears. I can't, to each their own. But yeah, it's crying shame. You got to take a special survivor, a very special genetics of that great monumental fish, and put it to death to see if you've won the state record, which will probably get beat next year or 5 years or whatever.
So when Dave Kellum and I went fishing on the quest to catch and eat all the fish in New Hampshire, Dave caught the state record channel catfish, right? And
yes, he did. Right on, Dave.
And the to get that thing certified, you have to find a certified scale in the state who will take it and put it on the scale. And that certified scale means like a deli scale that's been like regulated.
Right.
And most stores and delis won't let you bring outside food or items into their buildings because it's a contamination problem. So it's a real challenge to find that. We ended up finding one. It took us about 4 stores of begging and talking people into it. But then you have to find an actual fishing game biologist, not a fishing game officer, an actual biologist to touch that fish and confirm its species in person. And you catch these fish at weird times. We caught it on a Sunday night at 7:00, in September, and we had to find all this stuff, and we did it. But it took like 4 hours to certify this fish. So a lot of people who get records don't bother. They just catch and take photos, release. That's it.
Yeah, and it's all right either way. But I can imagine that poor biologist on Sunday night. Hey, man, can you look at my fish?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was like. He was annoyed with it, but it was a big deal. And it doesn't happen to him very often. It's not like every day someone's breaking a record. So yeah.
I told him not to give my number out.
I know. All right, well, that's all I got for that. So why don't we do some news, and then we'll get into Dr. David Shiffman. All right.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
All right, let's do some fish in the news, John. All right, this is kind of fun. And this is fun. It's just a funny thing. Do you know Greg Calhoun?
Yeah, he's a customer actually, and he got to do some co-hosting, I do believe, and
he did.
The guy is way into yarn and knitting, and
he has a podcast,
crochet, and all that. He has his own podcast on it.
Right, it's called the Knitting Daddy podcast with Greg, and he actually knitted me a little fish. I don't know if you're looking at your screen right now, but I've got a little fish decoration here that he made for me.
Oh wow, that
he knitted it. It's adorable. It's little, but now knitting fish is a real thing. Like it's a popular thing. Now, the other day, Doc Martin messaged me and asked me if we knew any knitters. Now, she didn't share this article with me, But then as soon as she talked to me, this article came up my news feed. And the headline is Crochet Your Own Halibut, Unwind with Our Handy Collection of Crochet Crafting Patterns, No Strings Attached. Well, maybe a few. Create amazing keepsakes, just have fun for the halibut. Shout out. And so
you can't resist that joke.
That joke is so easy, right? So there's all kinds of patterns, and they're all free. And it's at nps.gov, and on our Facebook, not on our Facebook, on our website, fishnerds.com is a link. But they've got halibut crochet patterns, tri-ups crochet patterns if you're really nerdy, lava flow crochet, walleye crochets. So all kinds of different crochets. And the patterns are on there, free to download. And you can crochet your own fishes.
That is fabulous because my daughter has just gotten into crochet and she's, of course, amazing at it. And I'm going to pass this right on along to her.
Yeah, both of my kids have gotten into crocheting lately as well. So it's trending.
All the art kids are into it. So check it out.
Check it out. And they're just cute. And that's why I put that in the news for no other reason. John, that's my only news I got for you because when I searched for fish news today, all I found was 1 million dead fish in Australia that died because of a flood. And it's not that interesting as a story goes because, shit happens.
Jiminy, I was going to look at that because I thought it was maybe because Luke took a leak in the river, but I guess it's something else, huh?
This must be something else, yeah. Luke's toxins got into the river. Speaking of Luke, he's been asked to come back on the podcast. We'll have to get him on in a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you mind if I do a little news story here real quick?
Why don't you get into it? Yep.
Okay, I'll get into it because, I do a lot of stories on fishing because that's the F that I'm most in tune with. But I just started feeling like maybe I was doing too many stories on fishing. So I want to do one just purely on fish because this was really groovy and it actually went viral. It hit a lot of the outlets. But anyway, here I go. Okay. The ghost catfish, or some people call them glass catfish. I don't know if that's right or not, but I'm going to keep calling it the ghost catfish, is a small freshwater fish that's native to rivers in Thailand. And the article says in Southeast Asia, as opposed to the Thailand in southern New Hampshire or western Kansas, I guess. It's the one in Southeast Asia. All right. Okay. So anyway, they're found in these rivers and so forth. They're relatively common fish there. And a lot of folks in the USA, they're bred for the pet industry. And they say they're pretty easy to care for, show up in a lot of aquarium tanks, about $5-10 each, or you can get them in the mail for like $15 ship. And so a lot of people know about these fish and they look pretty cool. You can check out I have the link down there and you can look at how cool they are. But apart from the head and of the fish and its spine, it is completely translucent. But when light hits a ghost catfish just right, its body shimmers with glistening rainbow colors.
Beautiful.
Now, they aren't they? Okay. So now experts at China's, here we go. I'm going to do my best. Experts at China's Shanghai. I've already blown it, Clay. Gosh darn it. I practiced before it came on.
This is why, John, I never try.
Okay. Experts at China's Shanghai Jiaotong University have worked out how this fish is able to create this iridescent glow. The team used a combination of scientific equipment, including X-rays and laser lights, for the study, which they shown on the fish. They found that the catfish have unique muscles which are stacked tightly and can bend light into rainbow colors. Now, Kibin Zhao, which I assume is Dr. Kibin Zhao, and Kibin, Qibin, I'm doing my best again, and his colleagues examine these fish and samples of their different tissues to figure out how this iridescence arises. And here's a quote from Dr. Zhao. Different from many of the fish species that have been identified to have structural colors in reflection, the structural color of the ghost catfish only appears in transmission, which is unusual, says Zhao. Those other fish tend to get their shimmer from phototronic structures.
Which like
shapes that
reflective things?
Yeah, phototronic, light, and so on. Look, I'm not going to even pretend to be as smart as our listeners or Doc or anybody else. But yeah, I'm at phototronic. I assume it has to do with light and the way they reflect it. Anyway, they have shapes that actually change the color of light as they reflect it. So, when they say, indigo bunting's actually black, not indigo, and stuff like that, I think this is what they're talking about.
I think so.
And so anyway, it's in their scales, their skin, their feathers, what you have it. And of course he said, this is how we assume ghost catfish got their shine too. But actually we did spend a lot of time looking for phototronic structures in the skin. We didn't find any that were the culprits here. So we started to study the muscle, which previously we'd only studied for the purpose to explain why it is so transparent.
Mm-hmm.
But after several months, we realized that it is the muscle that has caused the diffraction colors, says Zhao. The researchers found that the colors come from muscle fibers called sarcomeres, which mediate the contraction and relaxation of muscles. When light shines through these fish, these sarcomeres act something like prisms, breaking the light into its constituent colors. While these structures may occur in other types of fish too, we can only see them in the ghost catfish because the fish are so small, just a few centimeters long, and transparent. Wow. But the team says that their new findings could explain how other see-through aquatic species such as eel larvae and ice fishes also appear rainbow-like.
That's amazing.
Isn't it?
The
really
real
cool?
rainbow fish.
The real rainbow fish. You got it, bro.
All right. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that, John. I've never heard of this fish or seen it until just now. It's a very popular aquarium fish.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, we'd have to ask Jeff because he used to have that hobby. He gave it up. But Jeff is a remarkable man of many eventful past, and he talks about his bird watching and his aquarium days and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure there's a lot of our listeners. I hope there's a lot of our listeners that are into the aquarium thing, and they know exactly what we're doing here.
Well, good. They know more than me. They know more than aquarium is something I've never got into. So it's
my mama used to be totally into it. She used to have 3 or 4 tanks. Now she's down to one. But,
so my extent of keeping fish alive is a bait bucket with an aerator in my basement. So that's about as good as I can do it.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Although when I worked at the Amoskeag Fishways, I did build and maintain a cold water tank for salmons and a tank for American eels as well. And we had eel escape problems for months as I learned how to dial that in so they keep them in the water. So you get into work in the morning, you find eels squirming by the front door trying to get out.
Oh, wow. Well, they are born to wander.
They are born to wander. All right. Is that the news? Are we done with the news?
I think we're done.
All right.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
All right. And so Dr. Shiffman, who came on our podcast a few months ago to talk about his new book called Why Shark Matters, went to Emporia State University, where Doc Martin, our chief science officer, I like saying it that way, chief science officer, she's a professor there, and he did a presentation, and I said, Doc, you've got the guy. Grab an interview. So I'm going to just play that interview for you.
Hey, everybody. It's Doc Martin. I'm so glad to be back. I haven't actually been on the podcast in a couple months, I think. So I'm really excited to be here with a recurring guest. I think you're a staple on the Fish Nerds now. And so we have Dr. David Shiffman, shark scientist, back to talk to us about something new you haven't heard of already. He's actually here with me at Emporia State University in Kansas. And he's doing a lot of really cool stuff for us here on campus. He's giving a talk early this afternoon on public science engagement for some of our folks here within the department. And then later tonight, he's giving a huge talk to the public at large, featuring his new book, which he's already been on the podcast last year to talk about. So you can go back to an episode and listen to that. But today, we're going to talk about some new work that he's been working on the next generation of conservation research and policy priorities for some of the threatened and exploited sharks in the United States. And he's going to give us just a really brief introduction on what that research found and why it's important and why he's working on it. So without further ado, Dr. Shiffman, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Doc. Happy to be here. It's fun to get to be in person with one of y'all. This is my 3rd time being featured on the podcast, and everything else has been over Zoom. As frequent Fish Nerds guests or listeners know, sharks are in trouble. Many species of sharks face very, very serious risk of extinction. And in a lot of cases, we need more science in order to know how to better protect them. And in fact, I find that a lot of early career scientists, graduate students, postdocs, starting professors, want to dedicate their scientific research to generating data that will help protect species of concern. But their training is in science, not management, not law, not policy. So they don't really know how to do that. So that was the impetus behind this particular project, which is published open access in the journal Conservation Science and Practice, if anyone wants to learn more about it. But what we did is we did what's called an expert solicitation approach to try to identify a list of research priorities that someone is a scientist, they work on a particular species, they want to know what we can do, what we need to know in order to help better protect them. They can just go to this one document and it says. You don't need to guess, you don't need to reinvent the wheel poorly on your own. So we identified several hundred experts in the United States with expertise in fisheries management, conservation policy or advocacy, science, things of that nature, who work specifically on the species of sharks and rays and their relatives found in U.S. waters that are considered at some risk of extinction. And we asked them, just suggest research priorities. What are 15 things that you think we should know that we don't know now? That we, if someone were to come to you and say, I want to study something and I want it to be relevant, what should it be? Suggest up to 15 things. And then we combined everyone's suggestions and we came up with this list of 35 research priorities that are in 7 categories. So it's a bunch of different things. One is just knowing more about how many sharks are there, do more stock assessments than we're doing now. Do stock assessments for species that have never been fished yet but might be in the future, so we have baseline data. Do more frequent stock assessments of fisheries that are fished. There were questions having to do with migration and habitat usage, and a lot of emphasis on what is climate change doing to that stuff. We know that changing climates result in changes in habitat use patterns, but if a species currently lives in what's a protected area because it's its current range, what is going to happen in 20 years when that's not its range anymore? And there were a lot of emphasis on developing new research tools because the old ones that we've been using forever maybe aren't as great as we used to think they were. There were a lot of practical applied science about what types of fishing gear used in what way result in less bycatch mortality, and how can we handle sharks that are caught by commercial fisheries better to improve their chances of survival, things like that. There were a lot of questions about what happens to the ecosystem when sharks aren't there anymore. Questions about the broader ecosystem role of sharks, which is a lot of the stuff that I work on and talk about. It's why the book is called Why Sharks Matter, not just why sharks are neat. There were a lot of questions about sort of more effective ways to do public science engagement, and why do so many people know, in sarcastic air quotes, things that are wrong about sharks and about ocean conservation? What are the more effective ways for experts to get into the community and communicate these topics? And then there were a variety of other miscellaneous questions. So in total, we got 35 research questions, and we also had some priorities for policy advocacy, and we asked folks just sort of some general questions about what they think is the general state of shark science and shark conservation and shark fisheries management, and a bunch of questions along those lines. So the paper is out. It is in the journal Conservation Science and Practice, which is an open access Society for Conservation Biology journal, and we hope that it'll be useful for early career scientists trying to figure out how to put their research to practical good use.
All right, thank you, David. I do have a follow-up question, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And so, in looking at the 35 research priorities, some of those have to be more achievable or less achievable or just more or less difficult, right? Because of whatever has to go into conducting that research. And so, which one do you think is the easiest?
Oh, that's a tricky question. So notably, some of these could be rephrased as that thing that you're already doing really well, do it slightly differently, or with a different species or in a different body of water. So that would be probably relatively easy. Some of them are develop new nationwide scale collaborations or develop entirely new technologies. Those would take a little more time. And sometimes it's just reprioritize how we're doing things. In a past study that I did where we surveyed members of the environmental nonprofit community, there was a quote from one of these people that I surveyed that I was told by peer reviewers I had to remove which I'm still salty about. But they said there are some species that are just really, really well studied, and we don't need to know that much more about them. Do we really need to be spending millions of dollars to find out where great white sharks go to the bathroom? And I was not allowed to include that quote in there, but I think it illustrates nicely that, some species it's very easy to get funding for, and some species we know almost nothing about. So there certainly these are not equally easy for everyone to plug into, but I think if we were to work on all of these broadly as a scientific community, then sharks would be in much better shape than they are now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This is a very quick interview today because you've got a lot going on, and we really appreciate having you on our podcast again. It's always delightful to hear from you. And so we'll look forward to interview number 4 sometime in the future. So thank you so much, David, and we'll look forward to hearing from you when you have new work to share.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Doc. And, John, anytime we get Doc Martin to get an interview for us, we're going to take it every time.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Guess who's visiting Emporia State University this week with Doc? Rhett Talbot and Karen Talbot. Now, Karen Talbot is probably the best scientific fish illustrator I've ever seen. And
she's amazing. And
put together the glass collector items that Orvis now sells called Angler's Pint. And that's how I met her. When she launched that through Kickstarter, I went up and interviewed her in Rockland, Maine, which is about 3 hours northeast of where I'm at. But then I met her husband, Rhett Talbot, who is a National Geographic writer. He's got 2 books on sharks coming out soon. So the two of them, powerhouse science couple, going out to Emporia State University. Those kids, those students have no idea how good they have it because they're going to learn from the best. They're getting lectures from Rhett Talbot. They're going to get scientific illustration classes from Karen Talbot. So my hope is that Doc Martin will grab some interviews with them while they're out there and send them back to me.
Well, come on, Doc. Please do it if you can.
She'll do it. She'll do it. All right.
You know she will.
Yeah. Can we talk about Cinder Worms?
Can we? Let's let my friend Todd Corayer tell us a little bit about Cinder Worms. What do you say, Clay?
Let's get it.
Hello, Fish Nerd Nation. This is Crappie Hippie here, your tree-hugging redneck from eastern Kansas. And with me here on this fine morning is one of our new correspondents, Todd Corayer, the fish wrap writer. Todd was kind enough to do a piece in our last show about Rosie's Tackle Shop, where a child prodigy wraps rods and paints shells and also ties flies. And he sent me a video of her tying flies on Instagram. And what an intense face and what an intense young person. But I was mostly curious about this fly. It's called the cinder worm, and I want to know about cinder worms. I want to know about these flies. And since I live in Kansas and don't know how about fishing out there on the Atlantic coast, I had to get back after Todd. So Todd, I might shoot a question in here or there, but by and large, bro, I'm just going to let you take over right now and tell the listeners all the things you know about cinder worms.
Well, I appreciate you giving me the helm. But first of all, isn't that Rosie amazing? She is one cool cat, and the more people I've talked to about her, I always kind of lead in with this person who builds rods and ties flies and can talk the talk and walk the walk, and I say, oh yeah, by the way, she's 8 years old.
Yeah, I'm flabbergasted. It was a great story, and it was great to read it in your column, and it was great to have her on the show. No, I can't say enough. I don't want to bore the listeners by going on and on, but she is one amazing young lady. So tell me, because she says she can put us on some nice stripers with their cinder worms, but I don't know nothing about no cinder worms. So fill me in, bro.
Let's get the hard part out of the way. Cinder worms are, they're called Nereis limbata, which is a fancy way of saying it's a slimy little shaky, shimmering kind of gross worm that lives in the mud. They breathe through their skins, and they live very happily in the substrate of salt ponds and estuaries. So for about 10 months or so, depending on the weather, they just kind of live a happy life in the mud, doing their mud thing. And then right around Mother's Day, when the water gets to 60 degrees, somewhere in that range, 60, 62, 65, something in the amazing book of Mother Nature calls them, and they leave the mud, and they swim up on the moon, sometimes during the day, sometimes later in the day. It's a very fickle fishery, which is why it's so fantastically frustrating too. So it might be first thing in the morning. It might be towards sunset. It's really based on the moon. It's based on Mother's Day, as all things should be, based on our mothers and mother-in-laws. They make their way to the surface, and they wiggle around, and they shake and shimmy, and so there's two parts here. So they've left the mud because they know Mother Nature called them up, said it's time to procreate. So this is like nature's strangest spring break, right? So they all come to the surface, and they grow this thing like magically, and we're talking in hours, man. It's like they grow this thing called an epitope. So here's these little slimy things right around just below the surface, and they're shimmying, they're shaking, right? And all of a sudden they grow this paddle, and this paddle called an epitope. It not only propels them around the water, but it also helps distribute, bodily fluids necessary to,
What, sperm and eggs? You're allowed to say sperm and eggs on this show. We're scientists here.
Did I say that? No, I didn't know. All right. Well, now I have permission. The epitope helps deliver the sperm and eggs. So there's your next spring break visual, I guess. So they're all shimmying around, right? And this could last for a tide. It could last for a day. It could go all night. It could go, it sounds like my college years. It could last 5 minutes, or it could go all night. Maybe we should edit that one out. Anyway, so they're flying around the surface, right? And they're rubbing into each other, and they're banging into each other, and they're shimmying along. And so you could be in a salt pond on a Tuesday, right? You catch a bass, maybe two, just, normal fishing kind of thing. But on Wednesday morning, no joke, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bass. They just know, man, like they're in the ocean, they're doing the thing, or they're out in one of the bigger ponds, or they're cruising the beaches looking for eels or shrimp, or, and all of a sudden something says, hey man, it's Mother's Day. You got to get in the salt pond. And they come in by the thousands. And all of a sudden you'll be in 3 feet of water, and the surface is covered in these little pink wiggly things, and the bass just go bonkers. They are all over these things. They just know. They somehow, I don't know, there's a lot of disbelievers out there. There's no conspiracy theory here. Nature knows to send the bass into the salt ponds. And it's just, it's unbelievable.
Oh my goodness. Now I'm sitting here. I am shaking like a leaf. I am so excited. The very idea of it. Explain to us folks that are land bound, exactly what is an estuary? What exactly is a salt pond, first of all?
Okay, so here in New England, you get them all over the world, but here in New England, we have a whole series. We're very lucky to have a series of salt ponds, and they are tidal flushed ponds, primarily salty, about a third salt. And they have a very distinct aquatic environment, particular grasses and shoreline animals. We have shrimp and little brine shrimp, and we have mummy chogs and all these little shiners and minnows that live in there that feed the bass. And there's crabs. So there's, when the water's right, and even, in the winter, most things have gone to sleep for the winter, but through most of the year, there's stripers in there, and they feed on a pretty steady diet of mummy chogs and silver sides and crabs and whatever they can get up. But then when these worms come up, then it's like circus time. It's game on. These guys are in there and they feed. Some fishermen and women will make the mistake of, they get there in the tide and there's cinder worms up and everything's wiggly and shimming and shaking, and then it might stop, and then they all go home to have a beer. But the bass are still there. So if you're in the know, you can kind of hang out for a couple minutes, have your beer, and then go back to casting, because those bass are still there. And it is, oh man, the fishing is just so good. So they're all in this salt pond, and some will come and go on the tides. You can, if it's a Tuesday and you slate them, you go back on Wednesday, it's a desert. There's nothing there because they left with the tide to go find eels or, some river herring or something else that's on the beach.
Well, I tell you, this is the kind of fishing that makes you stick with it. My wife took a while to learn that. She's like, you stay in fish, and you want to keep fishing when you're catching fish, and you want to keep fishing when you're not catching fish. And is there any time? And I said, well, when you don't catch them, when it's not what you expect or what you wanted, you got to hang around and try to figure out the why on that. And so you've kind of clued us into the why. I did so well yesterday, and now can't get a lick, right? They've left us. They've left us. They've left the arena. It's like showing up for a concert the wrong day.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've done that. Yeah. When I was younger, I went halfway across France to go see Miles Davis in this cool little bar in Boulogne, France, and I was a king because I was going to get to see Miles Davis in France. I'm like the coolest guy in town, and it was the night before. Had a really nice beer in an empty bar all by myself. Anyway,
All right, that's a good one. But you alluded in as we were communicating back and forth about this piece that sometimes that hatch can be too good, and sometimes there's so many of these crazy things flying around that your fly, your lure, whatever you're using, gets lost in the shuffle. Is that something you've encountered more than once?
Definitely, you're spot on. That's part of the charm and part of the curse. So when they call it a worm hatch, it's really not a hatch. They just emerge from the mud. And when the epitope shows up and they're doing their thing and the water's all slimy, and the bass are in, honestly, the chances of you hooking up with a fish are like winning the lottery, because there's a million worms and there's 500 bass and there's you, and you're slinging, a 7 weight thinking you're top cat, you're going to catch a fish. And the fish are like, forget it. Have you seen these things? I'm going to eat the live ones. So there's a couple ways to look at that. Personally, I'm not a great fly fisherman. So if you're in the moment and everything's going crazy and it's circus time, I kind of just aim for the fish. Like, not to sound stupid, but I kind of aim for a fish and hope that, because their mouths are open, man, like they're working. You just want to basically, get a bucket, drop it in, just kind of shoot for the mouth. And
that sounds like a great strategy. That's pretty cool.
Well, you're not like walking a beach and you're just sort of sight casting your way down a sandbar hoping to find the fish. The fish are right in front of you. They're all over you. I mean, if you're waiting, there'll be fish bumping up against your legs. It's that cool and that frustrating at the same time. So the other way to look at it is you got to tie something that looks different. So if you're in this big salt pond full of cinder worms and everything, it's mayhem. Everything's going nuts. Instead of throwing a fly that looks like a cinder worm, and I'm not trying to lead you down the wrong road here, you got to tie something bigger, brighter, stranger. You got to stand out in that crowd. I have a good friend out in the Cape, Eddie Stahoyak, who's a phenomenal fly tire. And when he's in this kind of situation, he's throwing flies the size of like Volkswagen seats. They're like puppies on, these are puppies on a 9 weight. The whole theory is that when they're crashing all these worms, all of a sudden they see this big chihuahua go by on the left-hand side. They're like, ooh, maybe I'll take a swipe at that one. And you're in. So it's you want to match the hatch in the sense of like a trout fisherman. You want to have something in your box that has, the pinks and the reds, just like cinder worms. But when things are going nuts and you haven't caught anything, you got to get strange. You got to go on the outside, fish to the outside of where the fish are, try to make a splash, try to get something a little bit different, slow it down a little bit, or speed it up really fast. You got to trick them into being foolish enough to go after your big pink chihuahua fly.
All right. Well, listen, I've heard of that strategy, and yeah, the trout people run into this problem too. And that's a lot of what you hear is to change it up, make it bigger, make it bolder. But I really like the tip about fishing the outside of the school, staying out of the main mess and just picking them off where there's a little more space, perhaps. All right. Do you have anything else you want to tell us about cinder worms? Because I think you've pretty well covered it.
I would say, if you're gonna be in town in the salt pond, you're gonna be around Mother's Day, and you can't get frustrated because you went there on one day and there was nothing, because that's normal. It's that magical nature call. It could be, like I said before, it could be an hour, it could be a whole tide, it could be all night. So you just got to kind of stick with it. And when they do go back down, just don't think that it's all over. It's time to go home, because the bass are still going to feed. And that's when you might want to throw out, a little, like a pink sluggo or something a little bit different that sinks down a little farther. You'll increase your chances of a hookup. But it really is a fantastic time to be in the water. They're gorgeous to watch. It's just a miracle of nature to watch these things flying around. And they are a little slimy worm that breathes through its skin. I mean, they know a lot.
Apparently.
They know reproduce and get back in the mud.
Well, I've got the link to your video that shows them all kicking around down in the show notes. My plan, if I was your neighbor, would just to put your driveway on game cam, one of those game cams that alerts your cell phone. And then when I see you heading out with your fly rod, then that's when I'm going to just start, I'd be tagging along behind you at a safe distance, at a secret distance, because I think you've got a bit of an inside track on how to get after these things, and could shorten my learning curve considerably. But thank you for helping our listeners. We've got a lot of listeners up in the Northeast, and anyone that's not in on this, well, get in on it, because doesn't it sound like a lot of fun? All right. This has been Crappie Hippie, your tree hugging redneck from Eastern Kansas, with the Fish Raft Rider on cinder worms, tight lines, and Valentines. Peace out. All right. Thank you, Todd. That was a remarkable little expose on the cinder worm. This old Midwestern boy didn't know a darn thing about him, and now I feel like I'm ready to pick up my pole and get busy.
Cinder worm expert.
Yeah, I'm a cinder worm expert. I wish I could be out there by Mother's Day because it just sounds too fun.
And we'll put a link to the Dancing Rhode Island Salt Pond Cinder Worms on our show notes so people can take a listen to or can watch that. And then you have kind of resurrected Jeff Danaldson. I thought he was dead. And, because the Fish Nerds podcast went a little bit dormant. It kind of like went into estivation, which is almost like hibernation. And John, you've come back in and you've shook us up a little bit. You woke us up, got us back rolling again, got me motivated again to make the podcast. And now you got Jeff Danaldson, the effing librarian, back in.
Hey, buddy, I just seen that all you needed was a little helping hand.
Mm-hmm.
Your passion wasn't gone. It's just your time was being ate up by things that had to come first. So it was no problem. But yeah, you better know it. I'm going after Jeff Danaldson because you introduced us and we become buddies because we're not that far apart and we go fishing a lot now. And anyway, through fishing with Jeff, he is a real maniac about the culinary preparation of fish water side.
I have a question for you, John. Is it culinary or culinary?
I
had a man on the street stop me. This has literally happened to me a couple of days ago. I was talking about their local career and tech center, how their culinary arts programs are doing. And on a guy, I read the news I read news every morning for Real Radio. And for the Real Radio. And a dude walked up and he goes, "Clay, I love your morning news." I'm like, "Thanks." He went, "But it's culinary. Culinary." And I said, "No. I didn't go to Harvard. It's culinary."
Well, I think in New Hampshire and in Kansas, it's culinary, but you know what? It's probably the proper use of the Latinate U to go culinary.
Culinary.
And I'm all over it. Look, is it crappie hippie? Is it crappy hippie? Is it crawpie hippie? Is it crappie hippie? We can just do it the way it comes where we're living.
No, I'm gonna make it clear that culinary makes me want to like hurt people. It's culinary.
I hear you. You're just trying to be fancy.
Yeah, you fancy lads. You're culinary.
I'm a culinary
expert. Well done. Yeah.
Well, speaking of culinary
Bravo.
experts, Clay,
yep.
We've got the finest of culinary experts going to tell us a little bit about the culinary care of fish waterside.
All right. Damn it, I missed Jeff Danaldson. I'm so glad he's back.
Well, thanks, man. He's an awful cool guy, and I sure love him to pieces. We have a lot of fun together.
Oh, I feel like I'm cheating on him, John. I'll tell you why. Because he's our effing librarian, and I am reading a book right now called Chasing Giants. And I'll be interviewing the author later this week on that book. It hasn't come out yet. It comes out in April, so it doesn't exist.
This is so cool. How do you do this? How do you get a book that's not even out? This is so awesome.
They call me John.
And
usually when they do that, I call Jeff and say, "Send a copy to Jeff, one to me, or one to, whatever." But it turns out I'm reading this book, and I thought it was going to be like just another like fish book on how to catch big fish, which is not something that's interesting to me because I think catching fish is catching fish. The fish don't care how big they are. They don't know what you're doing. But right. it turns out the dude is a scientist, and it's a scientific process of trying to find out the biggest fish in the world. And in the meantime, I'm learning so much biology and history and paleontology as I'm reading the book. So Thursday, I'm interviewing him. He'll be on the next podcast. And it'll be really fascinating. I can't wait to see what he's got to say. So he also has a TV show on National Geographic. And I don't know. They call me, say, "Hey, Clay, you want to read this book?" And now I have the unedited copy. So I've been marking it up. I'll send it back to them to edit later.
That is fabulous. I cannot wait.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So, and I'll send the book out to you, John, if you want to read it after. So,
that'd be fabulous. I would love to do that.
Yeah. All right. So, what's next? We got so much.
Well, I just got a couple shout outs I need to do here real quick. I need some crappie spots near Searsport, Maine.
Where the hell is Searsport, Maine? I got to look it up. Hang on.
Yeah, look it up.
Hey, Siri, where is Searsport, Maine?
Here it is on the map.
That doesn't help me, Siri. I'm making an audio show. It's 3 hours away from me. It's all I know.
Okay.
That's really far.
It's near the coast, but I guess there's some lakes right around it. This guy's a Southern boy that got moved up to Maine, and he still wants to keep up on his crappie fishing, and he needs some spots. And I told him I'd shout it out on the Fish Nerds Facebook group, but I'd also promised him I'd shout it out on the show. So help Bob get into some crappie spots near Searsport, Maine. Let's set about like an hour's drive as the limit there, unless it's a really good spot. But you get my friend Bob into some crappie, and I will send you a crappie doodler. So call us, email us, do this, do that. Please get in touch with us and help Bob find some crappie near Searsport, Maine.
Now, here's the thing. Searsport, Maine is north of Rockland, Maine. Rockland is where Karen Talbot and the gang live. Karen and Rhett live there. And it's right on the ocean.
Yeah, it is.
In Penobscot Bay. So the challenge is going to be, there are small ponds around there, but which in
There's
those
one like
ponds?
little lake there, right there to the northwest. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it's curious because crappie are, and I can say this with confidence this time, crappie are not native to Maine.
Yeah, no, they're not.
They are not. Neither are largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, bluegills, pumpkin seeds, or any other sunfish. So it'll be interesting to see what people find, because it has to be a lake that at one point someone decided crappie need to be there.
That's right. That's right.
And I don't hear about a lot of crappie fishing in Maine, so it doesn't mean it's not there.
Nope.
It means I haven't heard about it. So
that's right, and that's why we need some help, brother.
All right, Seaport, see what? Yeah, Searsport, Maine. Searsport, Maine. All right, cool. Did we cover everything, John?
I think so. I did do a new video on the tailspin. So if you're bored for something to do and you want to learn how to make a tailspin, check out my YouTube channel, Glasswater Angling, featuring crappie hippie. But that's all I had for finals.
Well, so we just wrapped up our ice fishing season, John. We are done. I put it to bed. The fat lady sang.
There we go.
And can I read something?
Sure.
So I had a fishing trip the other day where I took a 9-year-old girl ice fishing with her parents, right?
Uh-huh.
And they didn't catch any fish.
Oh.
Right? Can you believe that?
Yes.
Some days that happens. And in fact,
it does. I don't care who you are.
You were texting me that morning. I sent you a picture of my ice shack with deer running behind it.
Exactly.
And I was ready for a good day. They came out early. They were game. They were excited. And this 9-year-old girl named Maris and her parents, 4 hours straight fishing. And the fish were there. And they were chasing jigs, but they would not bite no matter what we did.
Oh.
They ended up with 3 tiny yellow perch. And Maris, a 9-year-old girl, didn't catch anything.
Oh.
So at the end of the day, I said, thanks for coming out with me. I hope you had a good time. And they gave me the lip service of like, oh, it was great, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, they hated this. They didn't catch any fish. It must have been awful for them. So my guide brain says the goal is catch as many and as big a fish as possible. And then I took a lot of photos from I always take extra photos on no fish days, so they have a lot of memories, right? And then the mom texted me, and it said, "Thank you, Clay. You are so skilled at what you do and so patient and positive with us all, especially Maris. This was a wonderful experience and a very special end to the winter." That's a review for a bad fishing day.
Yeah.
That ain't bad.
That is not bad. Clearly, you're doing something right. And that is what fishing's all about. Mm-hmm. I think I'm really seeing some respectful parenting here, some really good guiding here, because teaching a child that gratification can be delayed or not show up at all, and you can still have a great time.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, you're one of those guys that can really translate the larger picture. It's really, you're creating a lot of good fishers out there, my friend.
Well, thank goodness for electronics, because we saw fish all day.
That's right. You had proof. They're down there.
We even put an underwater camera down and saw fish not eating stuff. So
rotten fish.
And what I provide, I sell opportunity to fish. People say, "Do you guarantee fish?" I went, "Nope. I guarantee opportunity to catch a fish. You're chasing a wild animal, so it's." Usually you catch fish. So,
well, deer must be like bananas. You got deer coming around, just forget it. We might as well pack up. Huh?
I know, but they were so fun to see.
They were
so fun. And
a great picture.
And I learned another important lesson on a windy, sunny day. If it's above freezing, don't put up an ice fishing tent, because when you screw your anchors into the ice, the sun's going to hit them, and they become just deep puddles where the anchors are. And when the wind blows, your anchor becomes a box kite and flies away. So I learned that. Because
Always learning.
I had to run really fast and hard in some slush and go catch my tent. and then catch it, strap it all down again, put it away, and then pretend to that family like, no big deal. It happens all the time. Meanwhile, I'm in pain and I'm winded, and I'm like, I'm okay. It's fine. Just keep fishing. Who has an inhaler? I need oxygen. I'm about to die.
Oh my. What a great image.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my game. So now I'm on to planning my open water fishing, John. But I have to wait for the ice and snow to melt so I can get to my boat and get that ready to go. April 1st opens up salmon season here in New Hampshire.
Okay.
Yep. And I have to wait till my boat thaws out. And there's 6 feet of snow between me and my boat. A wall.
I'm sure you'll find plenty of things to do.
Yep. Sunshine. I need sunshine. I need snow to melt. That's all. You got anything else, John?
No, I think I'm good, brother.
All right. Well, hey, we have a lot of thank yous today.
We do.
Yeah. Why don't you hit us with the people you can remember?
All right, I'll do my best. Well, first of all, thank you to Diana's Bath Salts for Fish in the News theme. Thank you to Wally Pleasant for our show theme. Thank you to Todd Corayer for filling us in on Cinder Worms. Thanks to Doc and Dr. David Shiffman for showing up and doing a little piece with us. And finally, thank you to Jeff Danaldson, the fish nerd librarian, flatland fly fisher himself, for doing a thing on culinary care of fish waterside. Did I get everybody, bro?
I think you did, because we know we're not allowed to mention the person who wrote our fish sex theme.
We are not.
He said to me,
thank you so much, because it's fabulous.
He said, never mention my name.
I know. Okay. Hey, and that's right. So if you want to send stuff and, just don't want to be credited for it, that's fine.
Well, we can use some more theme music. I need to have a theme for product reviews, which I want to do more of. We need a theme for our culinary reports, our effing culinary.
Absolutely.
So at least that's 2 themes we need right there. And I do want to, add more elements to the show. So if you have ideas, let us know. Today's show is kind of in the idea of where I want the show to go, where it's like a magazine. Lots of different voices, lots of different ideas, all coming together for an hour of fun.
Hour of fun.
Hour of fun. All right, that's it, John. They've listened to a bunch of fish nerds when they should have been fishing. So what's our thing here? We say, you know what to say, John.
Well, we've already done the thank you.
Yeah, so now
let's get on to
our closing.
Our closing, which
is, I don't remember. Wait a minute. What's
the first thing?
It is, remember the code of the fish nerds, John. Spawn
early and often.
Right.
Oh, well.
Yeah, you got it.
Can I do it?
Do it.
Remember the code of the fish nerds. Spawn early and often.
Never trust a free lunch with strings attached.
And swim against the current every chance you get.
You did it, John. You made a Fish Nerds podcast. Thanks for doing this.
Fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean, casting nets.
You know, I'm playing the sex music. I just love this.
It's up to you and me, girl.
Come on. It's so good.
There's only one way we're gonna get more fish in this world. It's up to you and me, girl. Let's spawn.
Perfect.